And it is time once again for another AEW Dynamite review here on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Hi, how are you doing? I am Mr. Warren Hayes. We are going to be reviewing last night's Dynamite. That's right, I record my reviews the next day, have a good sleep, make sure that my thoughts are all in order instead of coming out here with some, insane gut reactions. No, I'm here to provide, sensible takes. Which is why my stuff never really explodes anywhere. Sensible takes aren't exactly what the market wants, but nonetheless, that's what I'm going to give you. Right here, youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes on your favorite podcast application. Likes would be appreciated, and reviews and ratings and all that stuff. You all know the drill by now, but we are absolutely. What is my dog barking at? What are you barking at already? Of course, she's been super quiet, just playing around in the background here. She's got all of her toys. For those of you who have the benefit of video right now, she has all her toys all spread out here in the back. You don't see them. She's been nice and quiet and playing with those. And then all of a sudden, I start recording. She goes into the living room. She starts barking. I'm like, whoa, what's wrong with you? Anyway, where were we? September 5, not 5, 11. Jeez. The September 11th edition of AEW Dynamite is what we are going to be talking about. She completely threw me off. Doesn't take much to throw me off. Let's be real here. But, important to point out nonetheless. Lexington, Kentucky, the Rupp Arena, 2,791 tickets were distributed for this Dynamite. Last time they made it to the Rupp Arena, it was for a Collision over in August 2023. 3,288 tickets were distributed for that show there. So there you go. I mean, we're not doing the whole attendance thing right now. There'll be other occasions. So Dynamite is last night's Dynamite, I should say. A bit of a silly Dynamite. I'd call it a silly show. I don't know. Look, I didn't hate it. There's some stuff on the show that I liked, but overall, it's like, and I know what they're doing, but it was a very silly show. Lots of silly little happenings. And I'm like, why are we doing things this way? Why is this happening? And everyone seems always okay with it. I don't know. But, don't get me wrong. I have come full circle on the concept that of AEW adopting some sports entertainment. Don't get me wrong on this. But I feel like last night was absolutely set up like a sports entertainment show. It's a sports entertainment show where we got some good wrestling. And that's essentially the modus operandi of AEW for a while now. I mean, look, we're coming off of All Out, which I believe is one of the greatest pay-per-views AEW has ever put on. I think it's one of the I think it's a show for the ages, really. It was absolutely a great pay-per-view. A memorable one. And we're coming off of that, a show that really did focus on pro wrestling and keeping, the stories and the nonsense to a strict minimum. And we had a lot of stuff to follow up on top of that, but we come into Dynamite this weekend, and I'm kind of a guy. Look, I don't know what I'm expecting, but I'm like, look, we are on such a good trajectory right now. Things are going really, really good, and we end up having last night's show, which again isn't bad, but doesn't appeal to my sensibilities. There's a lot of stuff that I look there, and I'm like, and I know it annoys people, but there's a lot of things that are very WWE-esque that happen, and I know it annoys people. And there's some people that just hand wave it and go, oh, that's okay, I don't watch WWE. And why don't you ask yourself why you don't watch WWE then? Because that's a response I get often. So I don't watch WWE, so it doesn't bother me. Well, why aren't you watching WWE in the first place? Are you a former watcher who couldn't take, who could no longer handle, the nonsense that was going on the shows? And you're like, well, hopefully, look at AEW, it's delivering something different, because we're not different. When I say we, I mean AEW. We're not different anymore. We're not a really an alternative. We're not all that different. We're very close to what they do over there in Stamford. And it's especially true with a show like last night. The structure and how things were introduced and how they would segue from segment to match to segment to segment. And I mean, it's not even a question of, oh, there wasn't a lot of wrestling on the show, which there wasn't really. There were 5 matches, but there wasn't, 2 of them were arguably, one of them was a squash. Didn't exactly tear the house down with the wrestling. There was a very good match on this, though. A great match, actually. But it's not even that. Look, we'll go down and we'll see how it goes. But lots of silly things happening that just made me shrug and go, this is a very silly show. The show, though, didn't open up silly, opened up fantastic. Like, as far as a cold open goes, this one's hard to beat. Where we have the a pre-tape of Moxley and his new crew walking out of All Out, a bit of a Fallout promo, I guess. Walking out of Fallout, walking out of All Out. And he addresses the microphone in a brilliant Jon Moxley promo like we hadn't heard in months at this point. Because Jon Moxley is absolutely one of the best promo people that they have in this company. And, he's always solid, but it had been a while since we had a truly great Jon Moxley promo. And this was it right here. He's basically talking to Danielson, who'd been choked out. Like, wasn't it great? They're walking out of the arena. They're walking out of the now arena, and cameras are following them. And as they're walking out, they walk by the medical staff carrying out Danielson. I was like, wow, this is fucking rules. Mox says 2 years ago they made a commitment to build something real, something tangible that would last years and years after they're gone, and an idea that couldn't be destroyed or subjugated. Not for, what did he say? Not for money, not for recognition, but because it was, something that was worth doing, right? Something to that effect. He looks around and all he sees are egos out of control everywhere he looks, permeating AEW, and we can't have it anymore. He says their mentor used to call Danielson, right? Used to call Bryan Danielson the perfect wrestler. And he was always his lordship's favorite, he says. But his mentor always saw himself in Moxley and said men like him are what they are and they can't pretend otherwise. I thought this was tremendous. Just always tying in, tying into the past. Like, this is good pro wrestling storytelling right here. And just tying things in. Of course, we know who we're talking about here. And William Regal was not mentioned by name, but you know exactly what we were talking about. And for some reason, I saw people get upset about this. I'm like, but AEW's canon is the canon of pro wrestling. Why wouldn't Mox do this? Why wouldn't Mox refer to things that happen in his, not even all that far off in the past, not some obscure CZW stuff, like things that happened on AEW that had a massive impact on top of that, because the BCC for all this time has been one of the premier acts in the company that has always been associated with some of the best stuff happening in the company throughout its existence. I'm okay with, like, it was a nice little way to mention it, to call back to the thing. Like, no matter what the relationship is between AEW, Tony Khan, and William Regal is in reality, I mean, it's a good way to call back to the story, and isn't that's what matters, right? I think I would have felt weirder if you said, our pal William Regal, but our mentor, we know exactly who he's talking about. I thought it was expertly done. Mox says he's not a villain, he's not a hero. He's the one true king of these lands. Diplomacy has failed, and today he chooses war. So we're going to see with the rest of the evening as well how things develop. But Mox's end game is still not entirely clear, but he's obviously collected. He's got a group of disgruntled, like a group of disgruntled, true to form pro wrestlers, who are very authentic, who don't put on airs and so on and so forth, right? Didn't he call Danielson an empath, right? And he has a lot of empathy. Mox is like, I'm not built that way. So this was tremendous. Continues to establish that Mox wants to do something big, but we don't know just how far this is going to go yet, despite the fact that we saw him suffocate Danielson with a plastic bag a couple of days ago, not that long ago. But as far as the path of this group, the motivations they're on, what exactly they want to accomplish, what's the end game, might as well do the whole Mox thing at this point, right? Because he'll be back. He'll be back in the evening. Why don't we just do the whole stuff with his group, and then we'll circle back and break down everything again. I mean, we see Darby Allin arriving into the arena on his skateboard, and we're going to mention this here because it does have an impact for later on. Then Private Party and Commander come out. They make their entrance. They're going to have a trios match, but they get attacked as they hit the ring by Moxley, Shafir, Claudio, and Pac. And it's a full-on mugging, and Shafir is choking Commander out with the guillotine, and I'm like, whoa, okay. There we go. Pac gets on the mic here, and he says that they've been very, very patient, but enough is enough. This company is broken, and what happened Saturday at All Out was inevitable. And he says he's been lost for a very long time, but not anymore. Now he has something to believe in. Now he has a purpose. Diplomacy has failed. This company is theirs. All right. So, again, like they're talking about this company is theirs. Is this going to be more like is this going to be more like in an NWO type way? And I don't want to necessarily call a parallel here, but where you have one group of people, or like a Bullet Club, right? Who are like, we're going to run things around here, as opposed to whatever they tried with the Elite, where it's like the heels are in control. And I kind of feel now that the Elite, as the guys running the place because of the EVP status of the Bucks, is being a little diminished. Because all throughout the past couple of weeks and last night again, they're referring to Tony Khan making decisions, and Tony Khan made the match, so on and so forth. So maybe the Bucks do, maybe the situation with the Bucks being in control is just something that we all just want to set aside and never mind, because it wasn't really working, because it didn't make sense, because authority figure angles kind of stink. And now we have the Bucks. And so now the Bucks are just like, arrogant heels. And I wish there'd be some clarification on this. But I do get the feeling that they are abandoning that train of thought. I mean, it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that the Bucks were still in power regardless once Tony Khan returned, because that was the thing, right? is that the Bucks were going to be in control because they injured out Tony Khan, and then Tony Khan sent Christopher Daniels in as his scrap daddy, Adam Pearce figure, and then so he was going to be Tony's eyes and ears, but then Tony came back, and now who cares about any of this? Like, I don't even know why Christopher Daniels is still going around being a backstage figure. Like, who cares? Who could possibly care? And this, friends, is very, very much WWE stuff. It's their thing, and they've been doing general managers and backstage officials, and they've been doing that for years, decades. It's their thing. So when I see this, I'm like, oh, isn't that cute? Like, TNA does it, and they have Santina Marella to do it, and doing it, and he's cracking jokes. He's being unserious because it's Santina Marella. What do you want? It's like, of course. So, there's all this. So, I'd be fine if we just went back to how it happened and Tony Khan was this invisible figure that just booked matches. But now we have to have like his avatar running around, and the Bucks. Do they still wield power or not? Maybe we're just abandoned. Maybe we're just cutting losses and go, we're done here. This didn't work. The Elite haven't been necessarily hanging out together either. All three of them were on the show tonight. I mean, when they haven't been around, they didn't hang out together tonight is what I'm saying. They were all on the show, all three of them, but all in separate promos, all in separate segments, and they didn't crisscross. So maybe we're just done with it. Maybe we're just jettisoning this out the airlock. Could be, but to swing back here is with what Pac said and what Moxley's saying is that they want to go to war against who and what. Now the danger that we are facing here in this type of situation, right? Where it's like, this company is ours, this company's broken and all that stuff. It risks the danger of running an angle where you're saying the company stinks. And, it's kind of like, what was it, about a year ago, 18 months, maybe even 2 years ago, you'd have a couple of guys running around, Max, Ricky Starks, always tinting their promos with the idea that they don't really want to be here. They'd rather be somewhere else. I was like, well, why are you still here then? What are we doing? It's like, why are you still here if you don't want to be here? And it's kind of how I feel, right? It's the kind of danger that we're walking, that we could walk into with this type of thing, where it's like Mox just goes around saying, like, if he wants to talk about people not fitting into his philosophy, that's fine, but this, and we haven't heard anyone say this company is awful, but Pac is getting dangerously close when he says this company is broken. Oh, okay, no one wants to hear that the promotion you're listening to is terrible, right? Wouldn't it be better to say, this company, we are going to take it to greater heights. We are going to make it better, right? As opposed to like, because that doesn't necessarily imply that it's broken or that it's bad. It implies that whatever you're doing now is fine, but we're going to do better. I don't know, like we're getting very, very close. That then leads us later on in the night to a face-to-face with Darby Allin and Mox. Allin hits the ring, calls Mox out, who comes out with Marina Shafir. And he wants to talk peacefully, as he said. And Mox starts saying, nothing's changed between us regardless of anything that happened. And Darby's like, shut up, cuts him off, and says, you don't when we're here, we don't act like superstars. We came from nothing. We don't want to go back to it. And he doesn't take anything that AEW has given him being Darby Allin, for granted. He wants to, he says it straight up, and he said it multiple times in the past, that AEW has, he's grateful to AEW because it's given him everything he ever wanted. He tells more stories about the past, where he once wrestled Mox in, high school gymnasiums, and how Mox doesn't care about wrestling in high schools because he's about the business, and he loves pro res, and he does, he's not about the big money contracts and selling out and the bright lights. And he was his hero. Darby continues, he was his hero back in the day because he respected him. But what he did to Danielson at All Out was unforgivable because they were supposed to be family. And when you find people who are family, well, that's essential. And what he did to Danielson was unforgivable on that front, because he and Danielson were family. And Sting is, Darby says he couldn't do that to Sting, for instance. I could never do that to Sting. So Mox just says, okay, let's cut to the chase then. Darby, you've got a world title shot at Grand Slam, but it's not going to happen because the champion is indisposed. Important to remember. The champion is indisposed, but it's a blessing in disguise because Darby, you're not ready to be world champion. So he asks Darby to hand over the title shot. Darby's like, you got to earn this, pal. What are you talking about? You're becoming one of them. You're going to earn this. And Mox is like, okay, let's fight at Grand Slam over it. And the match is made. So there's a lot to unpack here, but the situation here is clearly Mox has a vision to take over AEW and establish some type of high level order. Like right now, he's establishing whatever group he's putting together as the top heel stable in the company. Because he's like, nah, I'm not wasting time. I'm going straight for the world championship. Give me your title shot. And I will concur, and I'm sure you will as well, that this new vision that Mox has is very different from an old Mox where he would be, he'd be climbing up the ranks and, he'd be getting into wrestling every week, climbing up the rankings so that he could challenge properly, right? But now he's like, no, he wants to take a shortcut. So that is a different aspect of Mox here. Now, even if we wanted to argue now about the rankings and whatnot, and who's the true number one contender and who's coming up against, who's coming up to fight Mox, like, honestly, who cares? Because, who cares? Because right now, AEW has completely done away with win-loss records. The rankings have, they tried to reboot them. What was it, in February? And they never followed suit. It doesn't matter. So again, something that was different about AEW that set them apart from WWE is just thrown away. Because look, apparently it's simpler to just throw world championship matches together without without building someone to challenge, right? Who does that remind you of? Anyway, so the group itself, we're not quite sure exactly what path they want to take, but Mox clearly sees himself as the top guy to be in this position. He probably wants to take it off of Danielson, and he probably wants to retire Danielson. And that's the thing, right? Because don't forget, Danielson did say that he will continue being a full-time wrestler until it's time to, until he loses the AEW World Championship, right? That's always the thing. I'm still intrigued by this angle. It's still curious to me as to how this is going to go. It's still very curious. But as it stands, when it comes, so we'll see how all of this goes down, basically, is what I'm saying. There's still just enough intrigue. It's starting to take form, but I'm reserving judgment. I'm enjoying what's going on. It's crazy how much this company really, how much Jon Moxley brings to this company still, right? He brings that credibility, that seriousness, that non-goofiness that guys like me and a lot of people out there too, I'm not going to pretend like I'm in a minority, really appreciate about Jon Moxley. It's a completely different vibe. But let's move into talking about these number one contenderships. So why is it so hard for people winning number one contenderships to get their titles, right? Pac had exactly that happen just a couple of months ago when he was supposed to fight Will Ospreay for the international title at, or whoever, Will Ospreay or MJF, at Wembley. Then Ospreay loses the title, the thing with MJF. And then Pac gets pushed aside because he gets finagled by Will Ospreay, and he finally gets his match, but at All Out. And what a tremendous match that was. You should check out the review on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show podcast, which was released yesterday, Wednesday. So look, maybe this ties into this angle, this disgruntled Pac angle where he wants to, be a part of this Mox thing of people who are tired of people being entitled and want whatever, maybe ultimately this ties in. But I look at this and I'm like, look, Darby Allin won the number one contendership for Grand Slam. And now it's like, no, it's not going to be that anymore. You're going to fight me for your number one contendership. Go. All right. But who cares? And frankly, I kind of like these stakes better. I kind of like these stakes more. It's not that I don't like the match. It's the storytelling that's all over the place. It's this, everything has to have a story now, right? Otherwise, otherwise people online are going to get mad. But the stories stop making sense. The stories have to make sense. We just talked about the Elite stuff with their authority position in the company. Doesn't make sense. That broke down fairly quickly and is still not resolved. Now, why is Darby agreeing to this? Why is Tony Khan agreeing to this? Why is Tony Khan okaying this match? Why isn't he saying, no, I booked this because I saw money in Darby versus Danielson. What are we doing here? And yet, no, we're flipping this around. And Tony goes, okie dokie, boys. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. Why are we going down this route again with another number one contendership? It's so weird. Because then in the meantime, you have Christian Cage, who's running around with a contract, right? With the AEW version of Money in the Bank, which I really don't like. I do not like it. I don't even like Money in the Bank in WWE. There's no reason why I would like this. I probably don't like it more in AEW because first of all, it's a gimmick that I don't like. And second of all, it's something that WWE does. It's another WWE-ism that they brought in. Oh, but Warren, they do it in New Japan as well. Yeah, well, New Japan started doing it because WWE was doing it. Because the briefcase thing in New Japan, the fighting for the Wrestle Kingdom contract, that's also fairly recent in history there. I just want new ideas. I just want fresh things. You know what I mean? You don't have to be WWE light. They even do that in TNT. Everyone does it. That's the argument also. Oh, everyone does it, Warren. Okay, all the more reason to not do it and come up with something different. Why does the Casino Gauntlet match work? Why does it work? Because it's different, because no one else does it, because it connects and it's special, and now it's become something that you immediately attribute to AEW. And anyone else who tries to do something similar, they'll go, and I'll point it out. I'll be the same way. I'll be like, well, this is just a copy of... That's what we want. That's what you should want. I'd say stuff that is different. Just fresh, new ideas. One of the things that we used to bemoan, when I say we, I mean me, that I used to bemoan when I used to cover Raw and SmackDown in the past on the podcast here and over at Fightful. The thing we bemoaned the most about the creative is, it's all the same people who have been in charge of pro wrestling for the past 2-3 decades who are still in positions of power today and making the decisions and making creative decisions. That's why there's no new ideas. So when AEW starts up, I'm like, finally, we've got some new voices in the room. We've got some fresh takes. We've got some new vision. And then what happens? What does AEW do? They go and they hire all of these people who used to work for WWE, who used to work under Vince, who had this mentality of, well, this is what wrestling is today, and brought in all of the tropes that existed there and are now permeated throughout AEW. And this is observable, because when they were not there, we were trying other things, such as just having a great sports-based presentation, which was fucking different and still could be different, but they don't want to do that anymore. Now what they want to do is cash-ins. Now they want to have Hangman Page walk around backstage and look at people being disappointed in him instead of him just running in and kicking their asses. They want to do championship celebrations where Kazuchika Okada shows up to hit on Mercedes Moné. This is what they want to do now, because they have all of the old ways of doing things. Why aren't we challenging ourselves into trying new things in pro wrestling? Why aren't we challenging ourselves to do something fresh, something we've never seen before? Instead of doing angles with cars, why don't we do anything else? What? This was a company that Tony Khan at first said not all of the action would happen inside the ring, nothing backstage. Oh boy, we are a long way from that. This is also a company where Tony Khan, when it started, said, I'm not going to have 27 people in the writer's room, wherein he does a press conference and he says exactly that he has 27 people working on creative for him. And what's happened to it then? What has happened? This is what happens. You have all of these things that stop making sense, that didn't make sense because Vince's attitude was like, well, if I don't remember what happened last week, no one else is going to remember, right? So that was his attitude. I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but they probably feel that they can get away with stuff. He says, it doesn't matter. But yes, it does matter. It matters if you want to create continuity, if you want people to get invested in your product. If you don't show that you care about the continuity in your product, people are going to turn off. And AEW overall is pretty good. It's been better at that. It's been pretty good. But when I see things like this, it just blows my mind. When I see things like this number one contendership stuff happening, when I see all of these segments, a bunch of people arriving in cars all throughout the evening, I'm like, what am I watching? This is the same thing. It's the same thing over and over again. And we'll break all of this down as we go along. I'm probably jumping the gun here because I got triggered. I'm definitely jumping the gun, and there's things that are just spewing out of me, but that don't connect because we haven't actually spoken about them yet. But the Money in the Bank stuff, the cash, did we really need that? And I know they used to do that with the big poker chip gimmick. And now it's just, they just have, it's not a briefcase, right? It's like a little metal case within which is the contract, and there's a nice AEW logo on it. Like, that is 100% a WWE thing. Like, the fact that Christian Cage can come out at any moment and cash in and people get excited about him. Why are we excited? Who cares? And it's not even that good a trope. It's not even that interesting. And I think that it's the kind of thing that devalues your titles. If you have people who can run in and just grab them, win them off of a cash-in, I think that ultimately you should be protecting your world title more. And I'll think about this. When Roman had the two belts, right? And they had Money in the Bank running around nonetheless. No one was challenging Roman for that. They were protecting Roman maybe at the same time. Sure, absolutely. But they were challenging for the US title and, whatever the fuck. And it's fine. They weren't challenging for the Undisputed Championship. And they shouldn't. And even here, this year, Damian Priest didn't cash in on the Undisputed title. He cashed it on the consolation prize. Because they want to protect they're probably protecting the people who are holding the title, but in the same breath, they're also protecting their titles. Why? Because they know that doing a cash-in switch it damages the reputation of the title, damages the reputation of who's holding it. And I don't think it's these great victories like Damian Priest won it. Good for him, but he ran in at the end of a match and stole a title. That's essentially what happened. I mean, it works with Christian Cage because it's in his personality, but you shouldn't be doing this with your world championship. Your world championship should be protected. And not that long ago, I believe just last week, I was talking about, or was it even it was last week. Or was it on the all-in review, all-out review? I don't remember. No, it was, look, it doesn't matter. Not that long ago, on this very podcast, I was telling people that the AEW has done a tremendous job protecting its world championship. And I sincerely believe that. I don't need this goofy bullshit around it. Cash-ins and all this it's nonsense is what it is. I mean, Christian Cage is perfect for the role, don't get me wrong. But he doesn't need the cash-in gimmick. He could just be, I'm gonna call my shot and set up the match whenever I feel like it, right? Instead of doing cash-ins like he tried to do at All Out, where I audibly groaned. Thankfully, we went in another entirely other different direction and was a tremendous angle. And he's in, Christian, he gets into the ring and, he's got his group around him and, he's calling himself, and this is tremendous, he's calling himself the reigning, defending, undisputed next AEW World Champion. I mean, you couldn't have put this cash-in gimmick into the hands of someone better than Christian Cage. Because that line sold it. I chuckled out loud. I thought, stupendous stuff. But I still don't need it. Nonetheless. I still think it stinks. He could be number one contender and he can be like, I'll take my time. But this cash-in stuff, man, that's no one wins. When's the last time there has been a really big elevation? When's someone coming out of nowhere? Oh, Io Shirai was a star regardless. It's like, when is the last time that it really did serve its purpose to elevate someone? I think they're boring. Anyway, we're all over the place in this review. Talking about the number one contenderships now, but that's the thing here. And frankly, I don't mind that there are multiple people who are lining up to go after a title. I kind of like it. Where there's people staking a claim, just saying, I'm coming after the title. Oh, I've got the world title in my eyes. I'm like, all right, okay. That's what a championship should have to deal with. And it keeps the cards in, it shuffles the deck. There we go. It shuffles the deck, keeps things interesting. And I like it. So I don't mind that there's like two guys running around with a number one contendership claim. I don't care. But what I do care is this nonsense about cash-ins And then having a number one contendership, but it's like, oh, you're not going to get your number one contendership. You're going to have to put it on the line, or you're not going to do it. You're going to have to do it later. Like, this sort of smacks of slapdash booking, of last minute adjustments. And it runs kind of counter to the great, to AEW booking, which recently felt like it had a direction, like there was an end point to what they were doing, and the stories were really well built, the angles were really well done. This is kind of feels we're like back all over the place, and we're waking up on a Wednesday morning and saying, nope, we're not doing this anymore. Anyway, let's go back to the top of the card. I'm still excited to see what Mox is going to do with his group, and I'm reserving full judgment until I get a better picture. And if it's just to wrap it up, to make sure everyone understands, if it's an NWO type of angle where it's like we're just going to come here, or Bullet Club, that we're going to run in here and run roughshod all over the place, that's fine. If it's something where we want control and and they become weird authority figures, and that stinks, and I have no use for that. I don't think that's what they're going to do, but you never know. Okay, back to the top of the show. We talked about Mox. We just talked about Christian Cage staking his claim as a champion. Like, of course, he puts over the kill switch, right? Having a light bulb appeared, and like dispelling any doubts that kill switch is going to go rogue or whatever. It's like, no, he's mine, and kill switch knows it now. And the audience chanted Luchasaurus, and Killswitch was going like this. And he had also this great line saying that he's going to beat Bryan Danielson so bad that he'll wish his wife had CTE so she wouldn't know what a disappointment he is. So that's a very good line. That is a very, very good line. Renee Paquette is backstage with the Don Callis fam and Will Ospreay. Callis offers Will Ospreay the opportunity to team up with Kyle Fletcher to jump into the Casino Gauntlet match, the tag team Casino Gauntlet match that's happening later on in the main event ultimately. Because he says, and look, you can't fault Callis here. He's like, look, I want my boys to have titles, and you've been in these Casino Gauntlet things since they started, and you've won every one that you've been in. So and Will Ospreay. So yeah, I mean, I like it because it makes sense. The guy's a manager. He's putting things together. He wants to create opportunities for his boys. That makes sense to me. So Will is like, I got a lot on my plate. Sorry, I'm going to pass. And then Don Callis, though, calls, after Fletcher tries to convince him, Don Callis calls in the favor. The favor that Will Ospreay agreed to once he asked Don to leave the Don Callis family. Callis is now calling it in. So Ospreay's like a man of his words. He's like, okay, bruv, I'm going to do it. I'm a little disappointed that this is what we're deciding to call the favor on. We are so excited we want to get rid of really great potential story devices so quickly. Like, this is something you could have brought up like within a year, within 2 years. That's something that we've forgotten about, that you don't think about anymore. But Don Callis, and he calls in the favor on something absolutely sleazy and counter to Will's personality, and Will is like, God, Now it's like, come on, man, team with your best bud. I'm calling in the favor. I'm like, this is very. It's a shame. It's a shame. And I feel it doesn't fit Don's personality either. Why would he have wasted it on that? I don't get it. We finally get our first match of the night. I think we're like 70 million years into Dynamite before we get the first match. Jack Perry, who arrives in his bus. He's just arriving to the building, gets off the bus, and walks straight to ringside. And I don't hate that. Don't get me wrong. It's not. I don't hate. I like the idea that he's like, to me, the headcanon that I'm creating here, he lives on this weird bus. He's got all little implements in the back. He's got a bedroll, and he's got a bedroll and an extra one for Anna Jay. they just live in there, and they go to the bodegas to get some bottled water and whatnot. And then he comes out, goes to work, and then he walks right back. Right, the match is done, and he's just like, he just takes a powder, doesn't pose with his title, nothing, just walks all the way back, gets in the bus, and hits the bricks. So he's like, I mean, I don't hate that. I think it's interesting. The match itself, I thought it was fine. Of course, Jack Perry defeated Lio Rush. I don't know if I mentioned that. Retained the TNT title. I think it was fine, but it was a little maybe underwhelming. Rush tries to get explosive and whatnot, and hits a couple of dives in a Spanish fly. Jack Perry lawn darts him right into the turnbuckles. Poison Rana by Lio Rush, and a flying knee strike gets the job done for Perry. So, it's all right. It was fine, but nothing more. I gave it 3 stars flat. Like, well worked, but bit of a nothing match. I don't know if it's just a question that things didn't work out, but I don't know. I don't know. It didn't click. Didn't work. Wasn't great. It's just fine. Alex Marvez, as Perry is walking out, catches up with him, and Perry says that people like him are crucified in the business, but are worship. No, they're crucified in this life, but are worshipped in the next. Okie dokie. We get a recap of the steel cage match from All Out. Then we have Renee Paquette chatting it up with the Hangman backstage. I mentioned this a little bit in my rant, but we'll he's, basically says, he says something to the effect like, if Swerve Strickland owned 1,000 homes, I'd burn down 1,000 homes, kind of thing. Like, no regrets, and that's it. Like, he's a big, mean, tough guy, and he says, if you got in my way to get to Swerve, or you tried to protect Swerve, I'm coming for you, kind of thing. And then he walks away, and he sees, and there's people there, there's Top Flight, and they're shaking their heads at him, and then he runs into the Dark Order, his old pals, and Evil Uno's like, I don't even recognize you anymore, man. And then he runs into Jeff Jarrett, and Jarrett, talks some shit and says, you shouldn't have touched my wife. And then Hangman beats him up again. God, this feud is... Can we just get over this Hangman Jeff Jarrett stuff? Like, for some reason, people really want this. Like, I have never seen such a throwaway match garner so much attention and so much desire from people to see something happen here. Who cares? Let's have Hangman do big, better things. Anyway, then security comes around to take Hangman apart, to take Hangman off of Jarrett, and Jay Lethal's there too. I was drawing a blank on his name. Jay Lethal's there too. I mean, this is absolutely 100% a very WWE backstage production thing, where the interview ends, the person starts walking away, and then you see conveniently placed superstars. I'm using the word, I know what I'm doing. Conveniently placed superstars who are there to just nod in disagreement. And then the camera pans over, and there's more superstars here who are nodding in disagreement. And then the camera pans back, this guy just appeared to confront him. It feels also inorganic and phony. Like, this is... Compare this to the previous iteration of Hangman, but when he'd be running around backstage, he'd be doing the interview, and then he'd turn around and go beat someone up. Or someone would be giving an interview backstage, and then he'd run in and beat them up. Like, that's the Hangman now. That's what, and that's cool. Not Hangman being brooding or, getting the scorn of his colleagues. Of course he does. We understand that he's a heel. You don't have to show us people backstage, especially baby faces like Top Flight, doing. You know, if I were Hangman, I'd grab like Dante Martin and say, do you have something to say? You got something to, like, why wasn't it that? And then he turns over to the Dark Order, who, by the way, are heels right now. So who gives a shit what they think about Hangman, right? Or is it the idea that even the heels hate Hangman? I don't give a shit. And right to his face, Evil Uno says, I don't recognize you anymore. Why didn't Hangman just swat the mask off of him? Just give him a swing. Very contrived. Very, very silly. Very contrived. And on this theme of a very silly show. Then we had the Private Party Commander John Moxley's group thing. Then we had the Learning Tree arriving in the building in a car. Darby Allin, Jack Perry, so many people just arriving in the building. We just arrived. So many people just arriving. And again, it's a thing that the other guys do quite a bit. Anyway, the Learning Tree are with Jericho. I think all three of them are the Learning Tree. I have to stop saying Jericho and the Learning Tree. It's all the Learning Tree. And they're in a Bentley. And Jericho is wearing his... Jericho's wearing his the jacket that Orange Cassidy ruined with orange juice all the way back then. And he says he still wants his $7,000 back, and he's going to hang on to the JanSport until Orange Cassidy pays him his money. The JanSport that he got, I think, on Collision, I believe, that he stole it off of him. See, all very silly things. If anything, like the $7,000, I'm like, yeah, like, that's actually kind of funny, and I get it, and it's a very pro wrestling thing at the same time. Where's my money? Give me my money. You know, I understand that. But then, you know, now I stole your thing, so you can give me my thing. I'm like, oh, okay. It's just silly. It's just silly little things. And he's going to show, he says, Jericho says that later on in the evening, I'm going to reveal what's in the bag. Ricochet defeated Sammy Guevara. What a great match that was. Thank God, this was on the show. And this was a much, much better showing for Ricochet on top of that. It was a much better performance overall in a match where I was like, I don't know, man, Sammy could not be colder right now with the AEW audience. Like, I don't think anyone really cares that he's back. I think everyone's sort of like not really a big reaction when he came out, and it was the same thing at the pre-show for All Out as well. Everyone is just like somewhat, it's that guy again. You know, let's give him his sixth chance. Let's go. I still think him being a babyface is a mistake, but look, they want babyface Sammy for some reason. But the match itself, look, so I was wondering how this was going to go, and it turned out these guys work really well together, as opposed to Kyle Fletcher, where everything seemed a little off. These guys were in lockstep. This ruled. This was fantastic. Had a stalemate between the both until Ricochet flies to the floor. They fight up the ramp. Sammy Guevara moonsaults off of the tunnel entrance. Tornillo by Guevara back down towards ringside. And then Ricochet does this double jump senton off of the barricade. Just hop. It's just fantastic stuff. He still got it. Does the running shooting star press. A great destroyer by Guevara. Top rope cutter follows as well. Ricochet lands strikes, as well as an axe kick, and does his finisher, the Vertigo, for the win. I gave this 4 stars. I was really impressed with this match. I thought it was got me out of nowhere. Thought it was tremendous. Great performance. Ricochet really was able to shine in this one, which is what they want to do, and they're building him up. So Good. And we have to be reminded. We have to be reminded of how great Ricochet is, used to be, is, will be, whatever. Use your favorite tense of verb here, because he has been relegated to the WWE system and style for so long that, he's just a guy who does a couple of flips, right? Now, if he can stretch his legs and show the spectacular side of him, which was part of his composition, then it's going to benefit. And it's something that we need to be reminded of, is what I'm trying to say. There we go. We need to be reminded of that. After the match, Beast Mortos comes after him, and my heart skips a beat. I'm like, this is going to be really great. Ricochet fighting Beast Mortos, a guy who is used to working with luchadors and being a tremendous base, like one of the most absolute fantastic bases out there right now, against Ricochet. Jesus Christ. That is the stuff that you plug into my veins directly. I am so here for this. So Ricochet gets attacked by Mortos, and Sammy is like, I'll go help him. And Sammy chases Mortos away, although Mortos should have just kicked his head in too. But the idea here is that Sammy, there's no hard feelings, and that, he's out to protect this junior member of the roster. We get a recap of Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale from All Out. Then Renee Paquette has Kazuchika Okada backstage. She mocks how hard defending the title was at All Out. And then Don Callis and Konosuke Takeshita pop in. Now, I forgot to mention earlier, during the Will Ospreay thing with Kyle Fletcher, Konosuke Takeshita was there as well. And he seemed a little annoyed that Don was creating these opportunities for Kyle, but not for him. Well, don't worry. Don't worry, Take Soup. We got this situation here where Don Callis basically points out, you know what, you may have retained your title, but you didn't pin this guy here. And that's the match everyone really wants to see. So we're setting it up slowly, because Okada, denies the challenge, says you'll be a champion, but not the Continental Champion. Bitch. Because of course we got to get that catchphrase in. So yeah, but I mean, that's still the match everyone wants. That's still the match we want to see. Then we had the Darby Allin segment with Mox, which leads us to Christopher Daniels, who's backstage, and Nigel McGuinness appears next to him, and he says, I got to talk to Tony Khan right now. Why don't we get that out of the way? Right now as well? Nigel gets later on in the evening, just before the main event, gets into the ring, cuts a promo about how his career turned out and how frustrating it's been to see Danielson's career raised to go to such heights while he had to sit on the sidelines. So he finally announces it. He has his match against Bryan Danielson at Grand Slam and Arthur Ashe. So the people rejoice. You're going to get the match. And I cannot help but question, wasn't this, will it be any good? Because Nigel looked a little rough, in good shape, tremendous physical shape at All In. He looked amazing. Now, does he have, but when it came to going in ring, doing shit, that looked a little rougher. Now, he's going to be with Danielson, longtime rival, ultimately someone he gets along with, that he has tremendous chemistry with. And it's Bryan Danielson, one of the greatest of all time. So he'll be fine in that match. But that's not necessarily what I want to focus on. I want to focus on, suddenly, Bryan Danielson, who was supposed to be indisposed, which was the motivation for Jon Moxley to come in and claim and get a match against Darby for the #1 contendership. Why is Danielson cleared to fight McGuinness if he's allegedly indisposed and can't fight against Darby Allin for the number one, for the title, which was planned. Like, what's the thing here? Silly little thing for a silly little show. But this is still nonetheless what's happening. Complete disregard for the reason as that was justifying Darby Allin to give up his to put his number one contendership on the line. Where Mox says the champion's not going to be there, so Darby's like, okay, fine, let's do this. But the champion is going to be there. How does this make sense? Make it make sense. Just, again, silly things. Let's move back a little bit. Look, I'm not American, right? But I still sympathize tremendously with the events of September 11, 2001. So I understand why we commemorate, why it's commemorated on television, and I think it's fine. But was it just me, or was it awkward? And I'm legitimately asking my American viewers and listeners, was it awkward? It felt awkward to me, and I am not American, so a little tribute they made, of course, is what I'm talking about. Mariah May defeated Queen Aminata. I thought this was a nice little hard-hitting match. I gave it 3.25 stars. Nothing out of the ordinary, but I think the ladies laid into each other hard enough where I'm like, okay, this is interesting. This was, of course, for an eliminator. This was an eliminator match. I will continue to maintain, however, like I did on the All Out review, that Mariah May should not be giving breath to people who are on Ring of Honor and who are, lower mid-carders and are clearly below her. Like, this didn't need a setup. We could have just had Queen Aminata come in and do it. But the fact that they decided to create a bit of an angle out of it, I'm like, why are we doing this? The world champion should not be addressing this, if that makes sense. And then after the match, she calls for Mina Shirakawa, asking her to please come back. So that'll probably be her first defense with some true meat on the bone. The Young Bucks are backstage putting over the match, the Casino Tag Team Gauntlet match. That's fine. And they say that whoever wins the title will the Casino Gauntlet match will get a shot at the titles at Grand Slam. Oh, but it might they might change it next week, and suddenly the number one contendership is going, that the winners are going to defend it, are going to get their shot at Full Gear. Who cares anymore? It might just change. I don't trust this I don't trust this process anymore. I don't. The Learning Tree defeated the Iron Savages. It's fine. It's a squash. It's the post-match in which we're interesting. Chris Jericho talks about the money, opens up the backpack, and in the backpack, Orange Cassidy still carries a framed picture of the best friends and the original setup with Chucky, Trent, and Statlander. And and then Jericho says, your problem is that you're still obsessed with friendship. And you need to learn that in pro wrestling, if you think you have a friend, you're probably being used. And Big Bill is standing next to Jericho, and he sort of looks down at him and he goes, I resemble that remark? It's like, anyway. Interesting little tidbit here. Orange Cassidy shows up on the Tonytron, and he says he's got Jericho's money, but not all on him. And then he turns around and he shows a payloader, or a front loader, I think it is specifically, right? And Mark Briscoe's driving it, and Kyle O'Reilly's hanging off of it going, wee! And they drive the front loader to Jericho's Bentley, and I'm like, oh my God, are they going to crush a Bentley? Are they going to lower the payloader or the shovel? Are they going to lower it off and crush the Bentley? Or do they have like water in it or some? No, they pour in coins. They pour in coins. There's like a ton of coins. There's tons of coins. So they just dump the coins onto, and the payloader isn't even that full of coins. You know, it's not like it's up to the brim with coins. There's a decent amount of coins, don't get me wrong. Just like the amount of times I'm saying coins right now. I'm saying it for a decent amount, I'd say. I'd even say I've said coins more than the amount of coins that you felt were actually in the loader. Anyway. Got the coins, and they dumped the coins all over the Bentley, inside the Bentley, because you know. And Jericho's going nuts instead of running backwards and instead of running out the ring and backstage to do something about it. We got these coins, and that is so the car was drenched in a large but not overwhelming amount of coins. And I'm looking at this, thinking to myself, that's probably the least significant thing that has been done to a car in pro wrestling history. You know, what's the worst part here? You pick up the coins, you have someone do it, right? You bring it in somewhere, clean up shop, pick up the coins. You know, all the coins, you know, maybe they scratch the paint, they dent the paint a little bit. Well, bring it into a body shop, get it done. Like, who cares? Like, it is legitimately like the least impressive thing. I guess the visual, the sound, you're like, wow, this is pretty cool. But I mean, I think for it to really be significant, you really should have filled your payloader full of coins. And then you would have been like, oh, that's just nuts. You know, if it was really like buried in coins. Now it's like, now what it, if what was, I guess, intended to be something really bad being done to a car just turned out to be like an inconvenience. It's more like, oh, this is annoying. I have to deal with this. It's just annoying. It's not like the car is really ruined or it's just an inconvenience. You know, you dump water on it. Now that's something else. You know, you crush it. You know, we're far away from Sid's car getting flattened, or then the other one that got, you know, compacted into a cube. We're a long way from exploding limousines, and you know, even people getting body slammed onto the windshields and whatnot. You know, we're a far cry from that. Silly. And then we had Nigel come into the ring, and then we had the number one contendership Casino Gauntlet match where Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay defeated FTR, Grizzled Young Veterans, Mansoor and Mason Madden, the Acclaimed, the Outrunners, who came out to a big reaction. Audience is really into the Turbo Floyd and the Truth Magnum, the Righteous, the Undisputed Kingdom, and Top Flight. I thought this was well worked. I think it was fine. It was clearly the least interesting Casino Gauntlet match that AEW has done so far. I think it wasn't bad by any one. Just to preface this, it wasn't bad, but I think it was the worst that they've done so far. You know, and yeah, it's a shame because it really goes to show the lack of depth in the tag team division now in AEW. Something that at least I've been talking about off and on for a while. Now it's like quite glaring. You know, where you have, you know, the Undisputed Kingdom and Top Flight, which are fine. You know, the Righteous have to come in here and fill a spot. The Outrunners, like, I think the gimmick is fine. You know, I enjoy it, but like, these are jobbers right now. You know, like, these are jabrones. And what made the other Casino Gauntlet matches so good is that there were no jabrones. Like everyone was coming in where you're like, okay, things are picking up because we're getting serious content, like real solid upper mid card to even top guys popping in here. That's part of the formula of why the singles Casino Gauntlets were so good, so well received, because the surprises were legitimate, where you were like, you don't have guys like the Undisputed Kingdom and the Outrunners and the Righteous who consistently lose matches because they're utility players. But at some point I was like, well, especially after the promo that the Bucks did, where they're saying, you know, we don't even know what team has it in this division to challenge us and whatnot. I'm like, the Motor City Machine Gun's going to show up? Because I'm trying to think about how they're going to jazz this up, how it's going to be interesting, because the depth isn't there. What can they do to create an element of surprise here? And I had people telling me, oh, you want to bet it's the Hurt Business? No, well, okay. I mean, it would have been surprising, but okay. It's like, what if the Motor City Machine Guns finally did decide to sign with AEW? But no, it didn't happen. Fletcher and Ospreay won. And you know, here's something that annoyed me too. Grizzled Young Veterans come out, and FTR, I know they're in a little TV feud right now. And FTR ditch the match, run up, and start beating them up, and they walk and brawl backstage. And they never really make it to the match. And I'm like, why? And shouldn't FTR be wanting to get a shot at the titles? Like, what are we doing here? It's all silly show. Just a silly show. As far as Ospreay and Fletcher winning against the Bucks, Fletcher winning and getting their shot against the Bucks, that's a tremendous outcome. That's a match I'm excited to see. Because we got no nonsense, straight up pro wrestling Young Bucks, the Jacksons at All Out. And now it's going to be the same thing, right? And they're going to be in there with two tremendous wrestlers. Like, that is a highlight match. That's one that you underscore. That's one that will make me tune in to Arthur Ashe and see what's going to happen. That match has my interest, even though it's a little weird, a little silly how this all came together. I think the end result is really interesting. But see, people keep saying there's so little stories in AEW, you know, everything has to have a story so much that we have to do these types of, you know, all these connect the dots things to create situations that could be so much simpler, where it's just like Fletcher walking up to Ospreay, hey, do you want to tag tonight? And Ospreay says, sure. And then they go. Instead, they had to do all this thing with Don Callis, and it feels very heavy-handed. And then, look, I'm complaining a little bit with my tummy full right now because that match is going to rule at Grand Slam without a question in my mind, without a doubt in my mind. But if you think that you look at this and you're like, damn, we're going to miss the Lucha Brothers in this company, aren't we? Yes, we are. We're going to miss the Lucha Brothers in AEW when you look at the tag teams who are coming out here. You know, the Acclaimed are what they are. Mansoor and Madden, they're fine. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy them, but it's another gimmick act, just like the Outrunners. It's a gimmick act. If they can deliver great matches, I will shut up immediately. But the kings of the gimmick matches here in the Acclaimed, they haven't had a great match in forever at this point. And I don't think they really even care anymore. You know, FTR and the Vets, the Grizzled Young Vets, sure. Sign me up for that. That'll be great on Collision this week. The division's in the state, man. This place that wanted tag teams to be a central focus, to be able to main event pay-per-views, you know, do something, what's the word we're looking for? Different than the other guys. And now it's like, okay. All right, then. So that about does it. We're going to wrap it up on that note. Big review for a silly show. Again, I don't know if I didn't hate the show, but I can't outright say I liked it. It's a mixed bag. Ricochet and Sammy Guevara ruled. I think you should check that out. Other than that, just wait till next week. Just wait till next week. Or better yet, wait till I do my review next week and then come and check me out to see if you want to watch the show or not. I think that should be your workflow moving forward. Wait till the Thursday, then catch a replay. I think we can all agree on that. Fantastic. I think we can all agree on a like on this video as well. Subscribe if it's your first time here. 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, 5-star ratings on Spotify. I'll be back streaming, so make sure that you have all your notifications on for that. But I'll be back very soon for more wrestling content. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you next time.